So I was going for a jog this afternoon, and I was really taking time during my run to meditate, to process, essentially being mindful and changing my frequency, especially when it came to money. Now, when it comes to being my future self, I know that I'm aligned in pretty much every single aspect or desire that I have, except for money. When it comes to money, it seems like my frequency isn't quite aligned with what it is that I desire. And so, a big part of really tapping into your future self and being aligned with the version of you that has it all is really practicing self awareness, mindfulness, and taking time out to think about what you have that's in alignment with what you desire and the things that aren't in alignment, and taking time to process, to recalibrate, to consider what things you can do different, or even just simply being in the mindset of thinking about that thing sets you on a path of aligning with that frequency. So today I was going for a run, nice 8 mile run, and, training for a half marathon and then later on a marathon. And one of the things that I like to do now is to actually run without music, without anything, just myself, just my own thoughts. And so it allows me a good time, over an hour, maybe sometimes even 2 hours of time where I am really in the mindset of contemplation on these particular topics, right? So what I like to do is start with an idea, and then I start to unpack that idea as I'm going on my run, right? So what I want to introduce to you here is a part of my process as to me aligning my frequency toward the frequency of money as I see it and as I desire it. Now, we have 3 words here, right? Air, money, trees. We're going to bring this together and have it all make sense to you, okay? Because when it comes to this metaphysical journey, this spiritual journey, as a metaphysician, as somebody who has a PhD in metaphysical sciences, essentially what you learn is how to gain wisdom and knowledge from everything around you, right? Because everything is essentially a reflection of you. Everything is a sign, a symbol, a signal, something that you can use to cultivate a sense of awareness about the wisdom and the infinite knowledge that is available to you all the time, everywhere. You are not lacking the access to wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Some people think that wisdom only comes in the form of books, or in this case, videos or audio books, or even lectures and seminars. No, there is more wisdom available to you just simply by observation, looking around, being aware, practicing, cultivating awareness. Okay. So we're going to bring it back to money, right? Because money is something that we all want, we all seek, and we all seek it in abundance. So how do we get into the frequency of the money which we desire? Now, I'm sharing with you my own personal journey as to how I think and how I realign myself when it comes to the money that I desire. So this is really unpacking the mindset. This is really me sharing the journey as to how I unpack, how I figure out my way of aligning to the future self that has all the things and the money, okay? All the money that I can imagine, right? So one of the things that I shared with you in a previous video is thinking about the relationship between money and air, and actually realizing that if we look at money as we look at air, meaning that it is abundant, meaning that we don't question it, we don't doubt the ability to get air, right? To breathe air. It is abundant, and it is the most vital thing that we must acquire. Like, we must have air in order to survive, right? More than we must have money, right? But we never feel a sense of scarcity or worry or concern or anxiety, frustration, anger, all those things. We never feel that when it comes to thinking about air. But we do think that when it comes to money. So I was on my run this morning, and the run is a nice, nice little trail, right? This is supposed to be a trail. And along the trail, I have, you know, trees, right? This is supposed to be trees, okay? I am not an artist in this sense. But this nice trail, okay? I'm supposed to be drawing like brick roads, even though this trail is not paved with brick, but it gives you more of the illusion, more of the imagery. Okay. So I'm running along this trail and I'm thinking about money. I'm thinking about my emotions when it comes to money. I'm thinking about the things that I've, created when it comes to giving value, right, to you when it comes to like writing this book and the journal and providing all of this value to set myself up, right, to gain money in exchange for the value that I'm giving out. And so as I'm running down this path and I'm thinking about money, I am also thinking about the message and the understanding of looking at money from a place of abundance, just like we look at air, right? As I'm running on this pavement, I'm running on this path, and sometimes I feel a sense of I have to be mindful about my air, my breathing. Okay. And then when you push a little bit, you feel a little bit of like, okay, I have to get enough air. I have to get enough. So it's bringing me consistently back and forth between thinking about money and thinking about air. And so I'm constantly reminding myself about thinking of money as I do with air. But the irony is I'm running, so I'm feeling like air is a little scarce, even though I know it's not. Right. So when you take a nice little jog or run a marathon, you may know, you get to a point where you're gasping for air, right? So you feel in your mind, there's a part of your mind that's worried that you're not getting enough air. Then you start to panic. Then you start to gasp and you start to panic for air. Your breathing starts to get out of control and chaotic. But the truth of the matter is, you will never run out of air, right? So really with air, there is no lack. You would never run out of air, okay? In fact, you can push yourself to the point of fainting, collapsing, and passing out before you actually, say, die from lack of air, okay? That's just how amazing the system, as far as your body is set up. When it comes to air, you will never lose it. All right. Now, of course, there are exceptions. Say if you have lung cancer, if you maybe abuse your body and you're a smoker and things of that nature. Okay. You're going to probably experience a life where you have a lack of oxygen and you need additional support like a oxygen machine, oxygen concentrator to help you with the air. But nonetheless, still, air is all around you. It's how you process it that is a problem. But when we talk about air in relationship to money, or when we talk about money in relationship to air, you have to realize that it is all abundant. It is all around you, right? So as I'm running on this trail, all these trees are there. The reason why I like running on this trail is because all the trees are there. And all of us know that trees create oxygen for us to breathe. Okay. And so that's why I picked that path to run it, because I feel like it is the healthiest environment. It is abundant with oxygen. And so it is the best place for me to run. Okay. And it's also healthier for me to run there rather than running, say, next to a highway where there is exhaust and fumes that I'm continuously breathing in while I'm running. So I'm taking this path and I'm running. And so now I'm thinking about the trees. I'm thinking about the trees. I'm thinking about money. I'm thinking about air. And then I start realizing something. I start realizing and having these conversations within my mind about how money should be looked at from the standpoint of abundance as air. Then I started laughing at myself because then I started hearing this conversation about money and the limitations that we've been programmed to believe. Do you think money grows on trees? Right? We've all heard that as kids. Do you think money grows on trees? Right? Do you think we're rich? And so what I started to realize, or I started to connect, okay, and now sit with me, be patient. I'm going to do my best to pull it together because, like I said, I am also in the process of this, right? So this is not something where I'm like, this is it. This is how you got to think. This is in support of you on your journey toward matching the frequency of the money that you desire. So I started to realize, okay, the value we have for money, how we feel about money is such a state of like urgency, right? We feel like money is everything. Without it, we're going to die. Without it, we're not going to survive. Without it, we're not going to eat, right? We feel this great sense of danger when we feel like we're getting low on it. We feel this great sense of panic, okay, when the bills are coming, when certain holidays come up, right? We feel this great sense of urgency for this thing called money. Then I started thinking, do we feel that when it comes to the trees, right? Do we feel that when it comes to air? No, we really don't. I don't know. You tell me in the comments below, when was the last time you was really concerned about air? When was the last time you was really concerned about trees? Now, maybe if you are vegan, if you are environmentalist, you understand the significance of trees, right? But we're not in a place yet where we are completely scarce of trees, right? We still have an abundance of trees. Okay, though that is at risk. If you ask an environmentalist, they'll tell you we're destroying more trees than we can grow. And eventually that's going to keep up to us. But the point here is to recognize how off balance we are when it comes to these things. How off balance we are when it comes to the topic of money. Okay. When we think of money as something that is urgent, that is something that is necessary for our survival, we are essentially misaligned, right? Because the fact is, without money, though life in a first world, second world, third world country can be a little bit more difficult, the idea of survival, like directly, and money doesn't really correlate. So you can survive without money, right? You can build your own home. You can grow your own food. Okay. You can survive without money. People do it all the time. They go off grid and they just make it work, right? They have some basic tools and then they just survive. They live. Okay. So it's not a matter of life and death, really, when it comes to money, especially when we compare it to these other things. Now, the fact is, when it comes to air, okay, we cannot survive without it. Okay, we cannot survive without it. But we're not concerned about it. Why? Because it's everywhere. It's abundant. We've never experienced lack of it. Okay. Some of us have. When you have an asthma attack, maybe somebody punch you in the stomach or in the chest. Okay. You may have some understanding of like, yeah, I've experienced it for a short period of time. But ultimately you understand the disbalance here, how things are kind of off as far as how we are looking at these things. We're looking at money from a place of life or death, dire, urgent. If we don't have enough of it, we're stressed out. We feel anxiety. We feel frustration. We feel like we're in fight or flight survival mode. when it comes to air, something that is actually needed to live, we don't even have to give it a second thought. We don't think about it at all, even though it is necessary for us to survive. Okay. Now, trees, well, the trees kind of happen to be in my line of thought when I was running. But when we think about the trees, I thought about, the idea of trees and money. Money doesn't grow in trees, right? Like your parents used to say. Okay. But also how trees are necessary for air. Without trees, we don't have air. So then, you start to ask yourself, if you really, right, the way you're living your life, okay, what's more important? We usually categorize money as number one, okay? Money is the number one thing that we're focused on, that we're stressed out about. If you're an environmentalist, you may think trees is number two. You may argue about trees. You may debate people about trees. You may even grow trees, And the irony is air can be number three, right? But the truth of the matter is, right, air is number one, trees are number two, and money is number three, okay? So, but here it comes together. When we think about money, we must understand that money isn't that serious. It's not urgent. It's like a toy, okay? It's something that we play with in society. We give it power, okay? And that is something that we have to recognize, is that you give it power. So the actual power isn't in the money. The power is in you, right? Because you put value onto the money. Society puts value onto the money. You agree with society. You put value onto the money. So when it comes to money, we have to understand that money should be perceived like we perceive air. So money should be seen like we see air. We don't take it for granted because we're born into it. We know what it means to breathe. We are breathing constantly, even when we're sleeping, even when we're unconscious. So when you live your life looking at money as something that risks your survival, you're not truly connected with the truth. The truth is, the only thing that is required for your survival is air. So if you want to be worried about something, be worried about air, okay? Don't worry about money. So essentially what that does is that takes you away from the idea of living from a place of lack when it comes to money, because it's not that serious, okay? Money is not that serious, okay? Money is not as serious as air. But you take air for granted. Now, taking air for granted, it's not necessarily a bad thing. What I'm saying is, you take air for granted because you know air will always be there. You know air will always be there as long as you have lungs. So let's do this. Okay. As long as you have lungs, you know air will be there. As long as you have trees, you know air will be there. Okay. Those are the elements of air. Those are the things needed for air. When you think about this set of lungs here, I actually saw them, right, as a tree. And then I was thinking to myself, oh, okay. maybe money does grow on trees. Okay. So connecting the dots between these things here is very fascinating to me. Now, as I breathe, you have to consider that breathing, okay, something that is easy, something that you can constantly do. You constantly do whether you want to or not. You have to. Even if you were to hold your breath and say, you know what, I'm going to stop breathing, it's going to happen anyway. Okay, that's how abundant you are when it comes to breathing. You have to think about money just like you think about air. You have to think about spending, receiving money, just like you think about breathing in and out of air. This is essentially what I'm talking about when I say that you have to recognize that the traits that are innate within you, okay, as it comes to abundance, as it comes to living, is already ingrained in your very essence. When you look at like technology within society, you'll see that many times what we are replicating in technology are things that we know are capable, that we're capable of, say, with spirituality or metaphysical sciences, right? The cell phone, the internet. Those are ways of mimicking or replicating the ideas of being able to communicate with one another telepathically, okay? Being able to sync with the universe, to receive downloads of information from the universe. That's essentially what the internet is, okay? It is a replica of that idea. The issue is, because many of us are not tapped into those abilities, then people who thought of it were able to make it simpler, almost like a lazy, dumbed down version of the innate abilities that we already are capable of if we were to tap into those aspects of self. So you have to understand that this is just a matter of recognizing money is essentially a replica of air. And this is how you have to see it. Money is an exchange, right? In and out, okay? Money goes in and then money goes out. It's an exchange, okay? Every time you hear about money when it comes to spirituality, they talk about the exchange of being grateful when you spend money, okay? Being grateful when you receive money, being grateful when you pay bills, being grateful when you pay your mortgage, when you pay loans. When you breathe, okay, one of the fundamental principles of spirituality is the art of breathing, meditation, yoga, all those things focus on the breathing, the breath. That is life. So when you understand the significance of recognizing the comparison between money and air, it'll begin to shift your mindset about money. Not seeing money from a place of lack, but seeing it from a place of abundance, just like and as you see it as air. So you must understand that, what's interesting is that when I made that video, I started seeing other videos of people talking about seeing and looking at money as you look at air. And it's fascinating because to me, that's synchronistic, right? It's something that you recognize when you are aligned with something, when things start making sense, when you start getting close to aligning with a truth, the universe starts showing you signs. The universe starts giving you messages and giving you hints like, okay, you're on the right path. It's just like with the angel numbers. You'll start seeing 111, 222, 333, things of that nature. So when it comes to this idea of looking at money as you look at air, one, gives you the understanding and the perspective to even pay attention to air, because we're not really paying attention to air, right? I know people who have a hard time breathing on oxygen, but yet they still smoke. That is because they really are not mindful about the value of air, you know? So, let's get into that. Let's get into like the value, like what is the value of these things? Usually we don't give air a lot of value. Okay. We usually don't give trees a lot of value unless you own a few hundred acres of land and you're trying to clear it out and you recognize you can make money off those trees. But usually we don't recognize trees as valuable, but we spend a lot of time putting value on money, so much value that it takes away from our own peace and tranquility and happiness and joy. So you have to understand that this misalignment as to how we think about air, money, and trees is because we are focused in. I mean, if you look at these things, right, the air is intangible, right? The tree, the tree is a physical thing, um, you know, that exists in the universe, right? Is natural, right? So there's a spiritual element to that is still connected with the intangible. Money, right, is just straight physical. Man-made, okay? Just something man has made up. So when we think about it in terms of value, when we think about it in terms of spiritual hierarchy, okay, air is way more spiritual, okay, out of all of these three. Then you can get into the trees as being spiritual as well, okay? Money, I mean, we're having the conversation about money from a spiritual standpoint. So yeah, you can look at it as spiritual, but most people don't. Most people look at it as something that's just physical, man-made, so it's not really connecting with the spiritual aspect directly. It's just a matter of your point of view. But essentially, the reason why we identify with money so much from a dire, urgent point of view, right, is because we are identifying with that good old ego, okay, instead of identifying with spirit, okay? We identifying with the ego, okay? This is something that is man-made, only available, only functional on this physical earth, right? So anything associated with the physical earth is going to be tethered by the ego. When you are identifying with the physical earth, the physical form, the physical things, you are essentially being led by the ego. Okay. So the ego says that money is more important than all these things. And that's the problem. You see, so you have to understand that once you recognize to not identify with the ego, but to identify with spirit, okay, then you change how you see money. You don't see money as something that is required for survival. You see it as something that is required for joy, for entertainment joy, like play. It's a toy, right? It's not something that will take away from your life or add to your life from the true essence of life and living, right? It's just something that you can use to play around, get certain things in this physical earth. But in actuality, air is actually required, right? It is something that is very important, even though we can't physically hold it, touch it, you know what I mean? Like money or even like a tree. So understand that the message here is to think differently about all the things around you, right? All the things around you, like I said before, are signs and symbols. They are messengers. Okay. Whatever it is that you're going through right now, whatever it is, wherever it is that you are as you're thinking about it, there are clues there. There are messages there to give you some insight. Okay. I was on the trail today running, thinking about money, right? Running, breathing, recognizing that if I stopped breathing, I would be gone. But if I had no money, I would still be here. You see? And then recognizing that the reason why we think that way about air, as far as not thinking about it, is because it is around us, it is abundant. That is something that we're taught. We're never taught, that's the thing. We're never taught to be concerned about not having enough air. But we are taught to think about money from a place of scarcity. We're taught that money doesn't grow on trees. We're taught that money is tight, right? That the struggle is real. Okay. But the reality is the struggle was not real. It was an illusion. It is something that was made up. It was something that was programmed into you. Okay. The most valuable thing you have is air, life. And if you know that that is abundant, you know that is always available to you, then most certainly money, something that of lesser value, lesser importance, is something that you can attract and achieve easily, because you most certainly are attracting and creating air, right? The process of breathing within yourself with ease. So I hope this all makes sense to you. Like I said before, I'm pulling together the idea. I'm having a discussion with you right now rather than teaching you something, you see, because the reality is I'm on this journey of aligning with the money that I desire. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you how to align yourself to be a millionaire, because I haven't done that yet. Once I do, most certainly I would tell you how I did it. But now what I'm doing is sharing with you how I'm thinking through the process, how I am meeting that alignment, how I am changing the dial, how I am matching that frequency. And it is constantly thinking about money, but from a different point of view, from a different way, position, right? Angle, So think about the most abundant thing that you have. Usually it's something that you never think about because it's always there. It can be the love of your family, right? It can be food, maybe in a situation where food is always available to you. It can be a multitude of things, but air is something that we can all relate with. We can all relate to. We all understand this, So recognize that you can have an abundant relationship with money as you do with air. Think about money as you do with air. Think about that exchange that's constantly coming in, coming out. When you breathe out, guess what? The trees are gaining from what you breathe out. Okay. And what the trees put out, which is oxygen, you gain. So it's an exchange that's happening, just like with money. What you breathe out, what you put out, you have to think in terms of whatever you are putting out and giving to another person, another business, that you are going to get that back in return. There is an exchange happening. Okay. So when you recognize that exchange and you recognize that money isn't that serious, but it is something that you value and it is important, it doesn't allow you to feel the sense of heaviness, because that sense of heaviness is the block that prevents you from actually letting it flow back to you. So you have to understand the value of exchanging the money, giving the money out in a way that is, of course, responsible, but in alignment with you gaining money back, double, multiplied. Okay. So I hope this helps you, because I was thinking about this today and it was like, it's something I need to share with you and help you to recognize how to shift, or how I'm shifting my mindset around money, creating abundance, creating prosperity, but also providing you with value, because I'm one to experiment in getting to things, come to an understanding, come to results, and then share that. And then I realize that there is still value in me going through the journey and sharing with you how I'm thinking through the journey. So you're essentially taking this journey with me, you see. So money is not something you have to be stressed out about. It's not something you have to feel a sense of urgency about or anxiety, pain. It doesn't have to equate to suffering, right? You must understand that there are more valuable things that are abundant to you, for you. And once you recognize that, then you can let go of the heaviness and the hardships of money, and that will make money come to you a lot quicker. Because every time I think differently and I'm lighter about how I think about money, more money comes. I get these little nudges. I get these little signs of synchronicity saying, okay, you're good. You know, something sells. Somebody reaches out to me, things of that nature. So be mindful and be clear that money is about you being in alignment with freedom, with feeling comfortable, feeling relaxed, feeling, tranquility. Okay. It's not about the hustle. It's not about the working hard and what you do. Okay. Especially if what you're doing is backed with negative emotions, negative energy, negative frequencies. It's more about how you feel. Okay. Dialed in, like how you feel into your nervous system. And I'll share that with you another time about using your nervous system to actually send out the frequency of money in abundance. But for now, just think about this concept of air, of money, of trees, of whatever's around you as you sit and meditate and think about money. Because believe it or not, whatever's around you as you are thinking about the money is your consciousness, your intuition telling you there are things here that are available to help you gain wisdom and insight to how you can switch and change how you think about money. All right. Let me know in the comments below if this made sense, if this helped. All right. And if you want, I can do another video getting more clear, because I'll be more clear about it. But let me know if this kind of topic really helps to shift the way you think about money, so that way you can actually become more aligned with your future self. All right. Make sure you check out the Future Self Frequency. The book is in the description below. It's connected with my YouTube channel, or you can just go to futureselffrequency.com. For now, go to drabundant.com, subscribe to my daily newsletter. And in fact, you get a free copy of the first chapter of the Future Self Frequency. Thank you so much. Peace and abundance always.